What would you say is the aim of Wikileaks?
So the aim of Wikileaks is to achieve just reform around the world and do it through the mechanism of transparency. Now, of course, many groups have that aim, but our particular view on the mechanism of transparency is to selectively go after material that is concealed, because organizations that have material and want to conceal it are giving off a signal that they believe there will be reform if that material is released. So we can do things very efficiently by selectively trying to get that material and stick that into the public intellectual record where it can be used by everyone to inform their decisions. Secondly, to try and facilitate a greater atmosphere, worldwide atmosphere of openness and protection for the rights of people to publish information, both to protect our own endeavour and to protect other people's endeavour who are also trying to reveal information.
So what impact do you hope to have on society at large, would you say?
Also, if we take a long-term view, the impact that we'd like to have from these two different areas is putting the civil into civilization, so achieving these just reforms, building up a historical record and intellectual record of how civilization on Earth in different countries works in practice. And with that information, better decisions can be made by different political programs, left or right, communist, anarchist. They all need information about how the world actually works to function reliably. And secondly, to produce this environment where the press is protected and publishing is protected, and to make that a standard and a norm. At the moment, we're seeing globalization between the legal regimes of many different countries and within, say, the EU internally. So that's because there's interaction between these countries, interaction on the internet as information flows across it. And so there's going to be a harmonization of laws that apply to information transfer. So that means there's going to be a new standard for freedom of speech. And what is it to be? So it's up in the air what it is to be. So it could be the best things from the Swedish Constitution. That could be the standard. It could be even better standard. Or it could be the standards that have been pushed by China on the one hand, and the intellectual property standards being pushed by the United States on the other. So the United States has a fine tradition of free speech. With the First Amendment, it has some forces acting against that from the copyright and patent industries pushing in the other way. So which one of these standards is going to apply to everyone is not yet known. So we would like to quickly move now to make a strong free press standard before it is cemented in.
So what would you say in the media landscape is it that makes you have a function now and a position that you can fill?
Well, so we are seen as a publisher of last resort. We are seen as the publisher that will publish important public information that other people will not, and also protect the people that are providing us with that information. And that reveals a weakness in the global publishing landscape, that we are able to do that and other people are not. And we're developing more experience on how to do that and pushing very hard to do this in different countries in different ways.
So what would you say that weakness is?
Well, that there's not a truly free press, that there isn't one, that it has never actually existed, and that we in the West have deluded ourselves into believing that we actually have a truly free press. We don't. And we can see that in the difference between what Wikileaks does and what the rest of the press does.
So, of course, I mean, corporations and governments want to limit our information. So, in what way do you think that media also plays a part in this censorship of sorts?
Well, what we see in the West now is privatized censorship. We don't see this simple idea of censorship that we had under Stalin. The iron fist saying, no, you mustn't do that, and hauling journalists off in the middle of the night to the gulag. Now things are much more subtle and sophisticated. So through privatization, we've had many government functions being run by corporations. And now we see the function of censorship has also been privatized. And what that means is that litigious billionaires and big companies are able to effectively prevent certain things appearing in public, or reduce the number of those things appearing in public by using the legal system or using patronage networks and economic flows to make it unprofitable to talk about certain things.
Could you give an example? Where do you see this?
So I'll give you a sort of a clear example, but the important thing to remember is that there's thousands and thousands of these examples. So in the UK at the moment, there are 300 active gag orders, secret gag orders. So those are orders preventing the press from talking about a particular matter, and not just that, but also to prevent the press from talking about the fact that they are prevented from talking about that matter. They even have a phrase for this in the UK, this problem is so prevalent, which is super injunction. So it's not just an injunction to prevent you talking about something, this is one level up. You can't even talk about the fact you can't talk about it. But these don't come from government directly. These don't come from the Labour Party. These come from the oligarchs, Russian oligarchs that have moved to the UK, and royalty, and all these are big businesses. The specific example was the Trafigura case. So this was an oil company, commodities trader, third biggest in the world, loosely multinational, but based around Europe, in Amsterdam, UK, Norway. And it dumped oil on the Ivory Coast that was contaminated, drove 108,000 people into hospital. So this was the biggest chemical disaster since Bhopal in India, which killed 5,000 people. And we had a document called the Minton Report that was produced by that company into the causes of this, and did it break EU regulation. The report said it probably did break EU regulation. And the Guardian newspaper was going to produce a big story on this. And as a result, they were gagged. The company obtained a secret order in court to gag all the press in the UK from reporting anything related to the content of that report and the fact that they had been gagged in producing this report. And there are hundreds of those.
You also stated that there were media companies that had access to the Collateral Murder footage before you published it. Is that right? Or
yes.
What's the story behind that?
There is one big media company, and we don't want to name it yet because we don't know all the circumstances, but we know for sure that one big media company in the US had the Collateral Murder video for years and did not release it.
For what reasons? Do you know?
No. So we don't want to say any more because we don't know the reasons. But there are other events where we do know similar events. So the Abu Ghraib photos, CBS had those and sat on it until Cy Hirsch was about to publish this in the New Yorker. The NSA wiretapping story, which is a whistleblower came forward, an engineer who worked at AT&T in San Francisco, and he saw that the National Security Agency, the big spy agency in the US, had been tapping all the telephone connections that passed through this major junction point in San Francisco. So the New York Times had sat on that story for a year and didn't release it. So
why do you think that?
Well, sometimes it is simply that the particular journalists concerned don't understand the significance of the material. That's not the case with these stories. Something else is going on.
What can that be?
I don't know. I'm guessing there's some fear about the response from those people who are offended, from the military security sector in the United States. And the journalists think that it incredibly would not be in their career interests to pursue that material. So even if they're personally interested in the material, they think that perhaps the editors would not approve.